Alright, somebody sent me a video asking my opinion on some racist comment in some UFC fight that just happened not too long ago. He sent me an article about it. I'm just gonna read through the article and quickly give my feedback on whatever the article's specifying. The title of the article is Mike Perry says corners denigrating comments have been blown way out of proportion. As much as Mike Perry impressed in his UFC debut against Huynh Nguyen Lim at UFC 202, he also kicked up some controversy, or at least his corner did. During the introductions to the fight, a voice could be overheard from Perry's corner pepping him up, and in the process slinging an ethnic slur. "He can't even open his motherfucking eyes, boy," the voice says in reference to Lim, who is a Korean fighter. Perry was a guest on Monday's edition of MMA Hour, and the insensitive comment was brought up when asked about it. Perry defended his cornerman. "Well, I guess I said something about it, which isn't my place," he said. "I think it needs to be taken up with him, that individual, more than my words. I can't speak for another man. I do know that man well, and I know he's a kind-hearted individual who loves all people he comes across, unless he is crossed by those people. But I don't believe there was any harm intended. That's all I have to say about that. Everything else should be taken up with him." The cornerman in question is Alex Nicholson, who later put out a statement via Twitter. "I respect every man who steps in the cage, and my comments were insensitive towards him. I was hyped for my brother. It was all love, no hate," Nicholson's tweet read. Perry scored an impressive TKO victory over Lim on the main card of UFC 202. He downed the much bigger Lim on multiple occasions, and the fight was officially stopped at 3:38 of the first round. The comments that his corner made marred the victory and left him to answer for the people he was surrounded with. Asked if he shared those sentiments, Perry queried as to what was actually said. "What did he say? People may have taken it wrong," he said. "I think people's opinion on this has been blown way out of proportion. They need to calm down." When told it was something to do with Lim's facial features, which would be considered insulting, Perry spun his version of events. "I don't know," he said. "I don't think any of my competition can see me. And when I hit Lim, I opened a lot of people's eyes." Told that the comment was made before he hit Lim, Perry joked, "Well, we can see the future." The UFC didn't respond for a comment on the matter, although when asked about it on Twitter, UFC Vice President of Public Relations Dave Scholler responded that the promotion was looking into it. So that's the article and my opinion. I'm surprised that they even wrote an article about it. I'm surprised that there was a backlash. I'm surprised that the cornerman actually apologized on Twitter. And I'm not surprised that it happened. I mean, there's a lot of disrespect when it comes to racism in America, particularly racism against Asians in America. And the racism doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's been going on for so long. I've just almost started to expect it. And I'm thankful that there's a backlash. I'm thankful that there's an apology. I'm thankful that there's an article written about it. I'm thankful that the spokesperson for the UFC actually said that he'll look into it. I think these are all steps going forward. I really think that if the same racism was pointed towards African Americans, it'd be a much bigger topic and much more of a bigger protest. I think when it comes to this sort of racism, the African Americans are more protected. I think the Asians go through a lot of bullying from many different angles. I think there's just a lot of unfair treatment when it comes to Asians. Like Asians are clearly discriminated against when it comes to Hollywood, and you don't really see that many Asians in professional sports in America. And not only are they discriminated against in Hollywood, but they're actually even attacked, like made fun of, mocked, and outrightly disrespected. Just, not too long ago, the Oscars went by, and, the blacks were complaining that there wasn't even one black person nominated to become, to have an Oscar, and that was a controversy. But then they go ahead and have the Oscars, and Chris Rock happens to host the Oscars, and then they decided to have him outrightly disrespect the Asians, in front of millions of people all over the world. And that wasn't even, they didn't even make a big, they had to be, they were forced to apologize, but it wasn't even really, it was just kind of brushed under the rug, not seen as a big deal. But it's just a lot of systematic racism and bullying against the Asians in America. And this whole thing about the slanted eyes thing, I remember dealing with this at the age of 5, when one of my classmates made a comment like that, basically making fun of my eyes and things like that, and that affected my growth, from then on forward, things like that really, they affect people. Racism affects people, big time. I think hurtful words, especially when it comes to race, is more damaging, or can be more damaging than physical abuse or physical violence. Because when a person gets mentally scarred and he's outrightly disrespected and discriminated, or hateful words are spoken based on a person's race, the person of that race, he can't do anything to change who he is. There's nothing he could do. I made a comment on Facebook not too long ago speaking about this quickly. I said, when it comes to racism, a minority has to deal with this for the rest of his life. There's nothing that he could do about that. But hatred towards cops, for example, a person could stop being a police officer, he could quit, he could take off his uniform, he could hide his badge, he could, he could go to work in uniform, and then afterward he could take off the uniform. The occupation, the title of being a police officer does not, it's something that could change. But when it comes to racism, there's nothing you could do. There's people out there that hate Asian people or hate black people. You can't change who you are. And that's the difficult thing about it, And to me, it also got me to think about, where the martial arts originated from. It originated from Asian people, from the Asian countries, from the East, particularly, mainly China. And imagine, your teacher is Chinese or Asian or Korean or whatever, and you're a white person, a black person, or whatever, it doesn't matter, like, you're something other than Asian, and you're learning from your teacher who's Chinese, and he spends a lot of time and dedication towards helping you progress and grow in your art. And then you just start disrespecting him, making fun of him, bullying him because of his race. But that's kind of what happens. You know, you get a lot of ungratefulness, I think, from Americans towards Asians. And it's sad to see it, especially being Asian myself. And there's really nobody there to defend them because there's not enough public support. There's not enough Asian people in America that have enough courage or motivation to stand up against it, so they just suffer the abuse. But African Americans are really good at coming together and protesting injustices. You know, and they usually get immediate results. So, but that's all I gotta say.